Hello, welcome to another episode of Connecting the Dollars. This week we are going to discuss DEI initiatives and the changes that have been in the news lately. My name is Emily Agosto. I am a CPA and financial advisor at Propel Financial Advisors.
I'm Amanda Vaught, fellow co-founder of Propel Financial Advisors and attorney.
All right, so we are recording this in early February. It may be released a little bit later, so we just want to make sure we say that at the top. Today, we want to discuss DEI initiatives, which stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Usually it's talked about in corporations and corporate settings. So, for a little background framework, DEI initiatives have been implemented across probably a lot of corporations that you've heard of. Target and Costco are two that have been in the news a lot lately. We were talking about this earlier. They're like in the crosshairs right now. But before we get fully into that, Amanda, do you want to talk a little bit more about like at the end of the day, how DEI can affect the company's goals and how they speak to the shareholders?
Yeah, there's been a lot of studies that have come out for business schools and other places that study businesses and how businesses can be more successful. And one of the studies have repeatedly shown that diversity of thought within a corporate workplace can improve outcomes of a business. By outcome, I mean financial outcome. The one exception I have read about is in the case when you're doing factory work or routine task work. In those settings, that's when diversity can actually hinder the productivity of the operation. But in more of a corporate setting where you have to think and contribute ideas, that's the kind of setting where diversity of thought can really benefit the company. So I think that's why not all, but a lot of corporate initiatives around DEI are in response to these kind of studies. A lot of times it's not coming from a place of necessarily doing it just to do it because it's the right thing to do or because that's their political view or what have you. A lot of times it is coming from a place of purely a financial decision.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, the DEI stuff has been in the news a lot. Who knows what's going to be in the news next week? If this issue is going to die down, I don't think it necessarily will, but I think it's important to take a step back and look at these and say, what is the reason these are happening in the first place?
Mhm.
And that can help guide our response as consumers, as investors.
Yeah.
So, did you want me to give a couple examples of
Yeah.
DEI
I
initiatives
was
I've Oh, go ahead.
Absolutely. I was going to say that a lot of people, if you don't work, like we are self-employed, so we don't have these particular like sweeping measures that other large public companies have. So to speak to people who maybe haven't experienced sitting in on a DEI seminar or something like that, what are some examples that you can provide about the subject?
Yes, I've seen some different ones. One that I thought was interesting was a company who had a 401k plan at their work. The 401k plan was open to all employees, regardless of race or gender or other status, right? But they did a study because they had started a type of DEI initiative at the company, and they saw that women and minorities were not contributing or taking advantage of the 401k plan in the same way that the men at the company were. And so in response, they decided to have more educational sessions and target those towards the women and the minorities in the company because they wanted to improve their participation, because they did want their employees to have better financial outcomes, because they understood employees who are more secure in their finances were going to make for better employees. So that was the initial impetus, but the presentations were open to everybody at the firm. It wasn't like only for a certain group of people. And then what they found was that everybody at the company started using the 401k more, and everybody at the company started having a better personal financial outlook. So even though the initiative started as maybe what you could call a DEI thing,
Mhm.
it benefited all the employees, not just a certain group. I think if you take a step back and look at specific programs like that, you can see maybe that's a little more nuanced than
Yeah.
what you can see in the news.
Right. Yeah. It's not just, I don't know. I just feel like a lot of people think it's just solely a political thing, and there's just so
Mhm.
much more to it.
Or advancing one group at the expense of another group,
Exactly.
um, which
Yeah.
is not something that's necessarily happening.
Right.
Um,
So what was that other, you said there was one other example.
Oh, well, this one gets me a little worked up because I lived through this with having children. The maternity leave policies, there has been push to increase the equity for maternity leave policies. And a lot of companies, depends where you work, right, have
Mhm.
been turning these into parental leave policies and recognizing that people have caregiving responsibilities beyond just their job. And so obviously, if you're a woman who gives birth, you need time to physically recover from that. But part of the leave is, caring for the child and bonding for the new baby. And there's a lot of men who become new fathers who want to participate in that as well. But historically, they have pressure to not be as present in the family because they have to go to work. And traditionally, they're the breadwinner in the family. The company expects that, society expects that, they expect that from themselves to an extent. But so turning these policies into a more parental leave gives the father the opportunity to participate and be present in the family in a great way. I think us in this case, men can get the short shrift. And so just having that opportunity is great.
Yeah.
That's my
I
two
mean,
cents. Yeah.
yeah, and for people who adopt, there's not a
Yeah.
necessary
Yeah.
difference between the maternity and the paternity. Like it, yeah, it should just be parental leave, which makes a lot of sense. And you're
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
benefits
Exactly.
both sides.
Yeah, recognizing that it's part of creating a more well-rounded person that's showing up to work. And you said a lot of companies have incorporated adoption. Some are now considering we're in the sandwich generation, right? Caring for children and for elderly parents. So it's not just caregiving specifically to newborns, but recognizing we
Yeah,
are humans with lives and not just robots at their companies, right?
people have responsibilities outside of
Yeah,
work.
right. Right. So,
Foreign thing for some people,
yes.
unfortunately. Okay, so that's some really good just overview of how DEI can actually make a company better and increase its profits, and so therefore increase the value to its shareholders. So now we want to get into how can you actually respond as a person, as investing. Obviously, as people, we all have opinions and we don't want to have politics get into our investing advice. Unfortunately, that happens a lot, but you can't really separate them always. But to limit our conversation to just personal finance and investing, how are there some ways that we can support these DEI initiatives or these companies
Well,
that have them?
yeah, I think that's a tricky question, right? Because what I have seen recently is people online, I'll say, see somebody who says, "Oh, I love the D&I initiative at Costco. I'm glad they stuck to their guns on it." And you may have that opinion and you may share that opinion, right? But how do you do that? So, with the point I was making earlier is any company having a DEI initiative is not necessarily about being a good person or trying to help women and minorities or other groups. It's about making more money for their company. And what is the point of this thing? What is how I'm like stumbling over my words
Well,
now.
yeah, it's just like where do you
Okay.
come in as the
Yeah,
person
yeah.
spending
So
their money?
yeah, exactly. So what I've seen is I've seen people, it's easier than ever to go on an app and buy a stock. And so I saw people saying, "Oh, I'm gonna buy stock in Costco as a way to support this." And I think using your money as a way to express your political opinion or your political viewpoint is a thing a lot of people do. But is it effective if DEI is something you care about, not just from for a company to make more money, but you think that DEI is important because you think women and minorities and other groups should have economic opportunities that they historically haven't happened. That's totally different point of view than wanting to make more money for a company, right?
Right.
I think a lot of people know about boycotts, right? You can spend money where you want. And when you spend money on a stock, it works a little bit differently than if you're spending money at a store, right?
Right.
Because when you're buying a stock, That's a different market effect than the market effect that happens in a store, right? Because if you're buying a stock, there's somebody selling the stock, right? And if you sell a stock because you don't like what the company's doing, there's somebody else buying it. It's not really having a huge impact
Mhm.
on the company than, say, the people who were upset about Bud Light using a trans person in their advertising, and they organized a boycott of Bud Light beer, and that had a significant impact on the bottom line of the company.
Mhm.
That's different than buying and selling the stock. Is not going to have that kind of impact. If you do support something like the DEI initiatives at the company, buying the stock is one way to signal your support, but is it the most effective way? And I would say probably not.
Yeah, in general, if you are someone who's inclined to support these types of initiative, instead of thinking of it at the company level, you can directly work with people or support small businesses that are women-owned, minority-owned. That's more of a direct way to use your dollars to support an actual person who's maybe been driven out of the typical workforce because they haven't felt that they were either able to be included for whatever reason. So that's one direct way. Just like summing it up, what you were saying, using your money as a consumer has more of an impact than using your money as an investor overall.
Mhm.
Amanda said that,
Yeah.
so that's your
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
your quote.
exactly. I do think there are ways as a stockholder you can make your voice heard, because as a stockholder, you are an owner of the company.
Right.
You do get a say, right? Um, but there are so many shares out there, right? That it comes diluted unless you say you could join forces with other shareholders who feel the same way. You can buy shares with mutual fund companies and other groups who do collect shareholders with similar viewpoints, and they start these shareholder initiatives that can have an impact on the company at the end of the day. And that's, like ESG investing or activist investing or impact investing, but those are typically done at the group level more than just an individual buying and selling shares. I want to say it is maybe possible to influence companies that way, but
Yeah, you want to
just
make it.
buying it on your app randomly is that a good investment decision for you?
Yeah. Is that an emotional decision or is that
Yeah,
like actually the strategy that aligns with your time horizon and your risk tolerance of meeting your financial goals? So it all goes
right.
back to that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think we also have to make it clear we're not recommending you buy these certain socks, or we're not recommending that you don't buy them. I think we have to be careful to not give investment advice here. Just want to point that out.
Yes, for sure. All right. So I think that was a good one. In researching stuff for this episode, I learned a lot. And I don't know. It's very interesting. It just goes so much deeper than what the
Mhm.
headlines are saying about this topic. So I find it very
Yeah.
interesting. And yeah, if you
I think
haven't,
too, ever since the Citizens United case, where companies could give a lot of money to politicians, right? Like corporations are people too. Corporations are making political statements with their money as well, right? So I don't think this issue is going anywhere, whether I know today it's DEI, but it's going to be something else tomorrow.
it definitely goes hand in hand.
Mhm.
Right. It's time to wrap it up. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions or comments, please email us at info@connectingthedollars.com. Find us on YouTube, Instagram, our website, propelfinancialadvisors.com. What
Lots of
else we got?
places.
I think that's it.
Yeah, let us know if I'd love to hear if people are actually buying stock or selling stock in response to the news. What's one thing to see it on social media, but I don't know how widespread it really is or not.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you in the next one. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.